introduce you to our next speaker. Our next speaker today is Neil Kane. And Neil is the president at Illinois Partners, and he's also a mentor with the Mentor Project. He's been named a technology pioneer by the World Economic Forum. He's an author. And today, Neil will be presenting the Innovator's Secret Formula: innovation, disruption, and market leadership in consumer products. Thank you, Neil. Take it away.
Thanks, Debbie. Let me share my screen and make sure that you can see that. Can you confirm that you can see it?
Yes.
Fabulous. Great. Well, welcome everybody. I would imagine there's people present from all around the world, so I don't know if good morning, good afternoon, or good evening is the right greeting, but I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you today about this topic, something that's kind of near and dear to my heart. You can see on the slide not only my name, but the URL for my website. And if any of you would like a copy of the slides afterwards, or you just need to reach me, of course, I'll give you my email address at the end, but you can always reach me through the contact form on my website. This is a little bit about me. I'm not going to go through it. I just put it in here so that if you get a copy of the slides, you'll have some context for it. But as Debbie mentioned, I've started quite a few businesses. I'm going to talk a little bit about some material in a book that I co-authored, which came out last year. And I also am a university instructor at Michigan State University. This is the book, The Innovator's Secret Formula. Here's a copy of it. It's available on Amazon as well, if you want to do a deeper dive into the topic. But what I'm going to talk about today is innovation and disruption. And it might seem curious to some people that, you know, some really big companies with a ton of resources and a lot of money and an ability to do a considerable amount of market research, nonetheless have created some spectacular failures, whether it's New Coke, Webvan, the Iridium satellite phone, the Segway, etc. You know, just being sophisticated, having money, spending time doing the kinds of activities that you would expect big companies to do does not guarantee success. And so we've sought to try to understand that. And my lessons here are applicable not only for big companies, but startups as well. And really, it all boils down to one fundamental topic. We believe that all disruption is caused by changes in product market fit. And again, with apologies, I'm giving you a very, very quick summary of the material. In a longer version, we could go deeper. But product market fit is a really important concept if you're unfamiliar with it. The term was popularized by Mark Andreessen, now a famous venture capitalist in Silicon Valley and notable as the founder of Netscape, the first internet browser company. But product market fit kind of describes this idea of having a match between the features and functions and capabilities of a product or service and the needs of a market. And the examples that I just showed you were examples of spectacular product market fit failure. But when you get product market fit right, amazing things happen. And again, we believe that, all disruption is caused by changes in product market fit. Now, it's not simply sufficient to just have an idea of a product or a market. And I'll use this example from Amazon. And these are real products. I pulled this off of Amazon's website by just going on there and searching for coffee maker. And while you might naively assume that a coffee maker is a coffee maker is a coffee maker, as you can easily see, looking at the different price points and the different array of features, that nothing is that simple. And obviously, this would also be true if we were talking about, say, automobiles, for example. So the $24.99 Mr. Coffee might be suitable for a college student in a dorm room or a faculty member at a university where you really don't care if it, gets stolen or broken or whatever, all the way up to the nearly $6,000 machine, which obviously most people probably would not put in a shared facility. And so why somebody would pay $6,000, I don't know. But again, you can see there's different offerings at different price points for different segments of the market. Another very useful way to think about this is think about McDonald's. McDonald's, of course, is one company. They have similar restaurants all over the world, but think about how McDonald's promotes itself to people on the go who want convenience, or people on a budget who are focused on price, or young parents with Happy Meals and drive-through for convenience, or senior citizens who congregate at most McDonald's in the morning. Okay, so again, our whole story here is that competitive advantage comes from having better product market fit, profitability, market share, customer loyalty, lower customer acquisition cost, which is a key operational metric, higher lifetime value of the customer, which describes the profitability of the relationship with the customer. All of these things derive from this sort of elusive concept of product market fit. So what I'm going to talk about for the remainder of the time today, and what we go into in detail in the book, is what is product market fit, how might you achieve it, and more importantly, how can you measure it? And there's no way to measure it sort of in absolute terms, but you can measure different scenarios. If, say, you're an entrepreneur or a brand manager or a product manager, and you're trying to make decisions about feature function trade-offs. If you've ever run a company and you've been experiencing low product market fit, this is what it feels like. It feels like an eternal struggle where no matter what you do, you just never seem to make any progress. And if you've ever experienced high product market fit, where the product just literally flies off the shelves, or you have, exponential growth, it's a rocket ship and you're doing your best just to hang on and manage the growth. Okay, so we claim that there are three components to product market fit. The first is a product's customer value dimensions. That is, what are those characteristics of a product that matter to people? Like if we look back at the coffee makers that I just showed, is it, its capacity? Is it high quality? Is it the ability to make lattes and espressos and macchiatos and blah, blah, blah? Or do you just want, a pot of coffee, right? So again, different value dimensions for different market segments. For a given market segment, what is the weight or the importance that a customer places on that? So again, if we were talking about automobiles, probably everybody in the audience knows that Volvo promotes themselves as the safest automobile. So if safety is a dimension that matters to you, you're going to look at a Volvo. If speed and power matter to you, you might look at a Ferrari or a Tesla, but nobody buys a Ferrari when safety is their dominant concern. And then performance too, like if gas mileage, fuel economy was an important dimension for you, you might look at an economy car or a hybrid or an electric vehicle. You wouldn't look at a Ford, F-150 or a GMC Tundra truck, which, get 10 to 12 miles per gallon. Okay, so the only way to improve product market fit, which is the job of a business owner, is to change one or more of these three factors. So let's go through those. So the first thing that I mentioned, these value dimensions, I talked about automobiles, I talked about coffee makers. Here you can see a couple of other examples. So like for the motorcycle, performance, style, the brand, etc., TCO, total cost of ownership, might be involved for people who care about fuel economy, repairability, etc. You can see some other examples for like Windows, a smartphone, Coca-Cola, etc. All right, I hope this concept is understandable here. And here are some other examples of these customer value dimensions. Again, performance, speed, service, economy. It differs for every product, it differs for every brand, and most significantly, it differs for every market segment. If you think again of a company like General Motors, they've got different nameplates for different market segments. Cadillac, which is their premium brand, is very different than Chevrolet in terms of who they market to and what they promise to their customers. And what we go through in the book in a lot of detail is a way to kind of quantify this. And what it all boils down to is understanding these value dimensions, being able to ascribe certain weights to them, kind of like a weighted average model, if you're familiar with that. And then you have to be able to evaluate for a given customer segment how your product performs against these value dimensions. So for example, and this is not any particular product, but if we knew that our market segment was really focused on quality, durability, and price, so I don't know, maybe this is an automobile perhaps, or the motorcycle, sounds like some kind of durable piece of equipment. And then we understood that for the market segment that we're targeting, say quality is the most important dimension. So the customers would weight that at 50%. Durability is also important, but they care about price, but it's hardly the dominant consideration. And so if you do the multiplication, you can kind of see how this works out, right? And so then if you were a product manager, you could compare different alternatives, or you could make the decision now, well, how might product market fit and our market share be affected if we say lowered the price, or if we raise the price by adding a higher performance engine, or we added more features. We would improve some dimensions, we would harm other dimensions like fuel economy or price, and we now have an analytical tool to be able to decide whether those are good decisions or not. Now I'm going to switch gears kind of for the second half of the talk and talk about ways that you can improve product market fit. And basically there's 5 ways that you can do that. You can change the product, and you see the 3 ways there, or you can change the market that you're pursuing. And I'll go through each of these now pretty briefly. So technology innovation, right, is when, as you can see here, we go from candles to incandescent bulbs to CFLs, now LEDs. There's no question that each generation of this technology was superior on just about every dimension to the one that preceded it. Okay, so you get more light for less cost, and commonly, when the light bulb came out, it was really disruptive to those companies that were candle makers. And these days, with LEDs being as popular as they are, there really are very few or no manufacturers left any longer who make incandescent bulbs. In fact, I think it's illegal to sell them in the United States. So you can see how, if you were an incumbent manufacturer at one of these earlier generations, how you could really be harmed if you're not innovating in technology. Here's another example, right? Going from records to tapes to CDs, now to MP3s, and then even streaming media kind of is beyond that. All right, that was technology. Second way that you can innovate is through design innovations. So better, cooler, spiffier design, right? Maybe. The minivan, which was shown there, was hugely disruptive when it came out, I think in like maybe the late 70s, early 80s, by creating a vehicle that was spacious enough for kids that didn't look like a truck. Okay, so clearly targeted at the demographic that we call soccer moms. Okay, Facebook was very disruptive in terms of connecting people, and now it's being very disruptive to the advertising industry, media, and certainly we can all, at least in the United States, appreciate its effect that it's had on politics and society. The third method of innovation is to change the business model, right? And here are some examples. Like a department store, it's hard to really understand that that was once innovative, but prior to the department store, you'd walk down Main Street and there was a dry goods company and a textile place and a place, different merchants doing all sorts of different things. And the department store put them all under one roof in a very large store. We can all probably relate to how iTunes was a business model innovation, which created a lot of problems for record companies, okay? Or Netflix and what its streaming platform has done to the movie industry, okay? These aren't technology innovations per se, they're business model innovations, of course, enabled by technology. The other 2 techniques, remember there were 5, 3 were technology. Now I'm talking about the 2 market techniques. One is you take the same product and you just go after a different market. And there are a lot of examples of kind of big brands, that might be dominant in some large economy like in the United States or Europe, that then take basically the same product, oftentimes put it in smaller or different packaging in order to make it accessible for like developing markets. Just one example, okay? And then the other one is changing market attitudes about a particular product. And I'm going to go through a brief case study here now before wrapping up, okay? So as I mentioned before, one of the biggest innovations of the 20th century was the electric light bulb. And so imagine, if you will, that it's about 100, 120 years ago, and you're a candle manufacturer. Okay, what would you do? So we're going to talk about Crisco, which some of you may know is vegetable shortening. It basically is kind of like a cooking oil, but it's solid. If you open up the can, it's kind of a white, sort of waxy substance. It looks like basically like hand lotion, but it's basically, a hydrogenated vegetable protein. Okay. But 115 years ago, William Procter of Procter and Gamble, the famous soap making company, also actually got started making candles. Okay. And so once the electric light bulb, and not just the light bulb, right, but the electrification, the grid, made it possible then for electrification to be possible. So there was actually two very important innovations. Was really creating a lot of problems for their legacy candle business. So if you're Procter and Gamble, what do you do? Okay, it's the end of the wax age. All right. And it turns out that the way in which you make candles, and the reason why they got into the soap business, is because they had these mills that make cottonseed oil. Now, I'm not an expert in what cottonseed oil is, but it's some sort of agricultural product that's a raw material for candles and soap. And Procter and Gamble were vertically integrated. They had all of this capacity making cottonseed oil because it fed their downstream business making candles and soap. So now, as the candle business was being radically disrupted by the electric light bulb, they had to figure out what they could make from cottonseed oil. And what they discovered was that by adding hydrogen, process called hydrogenation, to cottonseed oil, they could turn it into something that resembled lard, which is, of course, animal fat, which is a popular thing that's used in cooking and baking all the time, right? And so the product that they came up with, Crisco, is actually an acronym which stands for crystallized cottonseed oil. Okay, but the problem that they had was it was a lousy product. Okay, people preferred overwhelmingly the taste of lard. Okay, lard was accepted, it was well understood, it's got a great sort of mouthfeel, kind of like butter. Crisco was a new product, it was synthetic, which wasn't deemed to be an advantageous thing at the time. And in taste tests, and again, we go through this a little bit more in the book, people overwhelmingly preferred lard. So if you're Procter and Gamble and you've got this new product that people don't like, what do you do? Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry. And so what they wound up doing, okay, was they began to promote it based on this new dimension of health. It turns out that, lard is fattening, and we now understand the health consequences of lard. But what Crisco wound up doing was they promoted it based on it being a healthier product, and they changed the customer's value dimension from purely based on taste to now having a awareness and a preference for products that were healthy for them. And that's how Crisco became this very, very dominant and well-known brand. The irony in the story is that, we learn 50, 80 years later that hydrogenated oils themselves are not that healthy because they contain trans fats. And much later, Procter & Gamble actually wound up changing the formulation of Crisco again. But they really get this sort of credit for helping the consumer perception to go from a very tasty but unhealthy product that had a very high market share to something that consumers in blind tests said they didn't like, but they exhibited a preference for it because of the taste, because of the health benefits, excuse me. So I'm going to wrap up there because I'm out of time. But again, this is all just a summary of what's in the book. If any of you would like copies of the slides or you have questions for me, this is the best way to reach me. My email address is there. Connect with me on LinkedIn if you'd like, but please let me know in a LinkedIn invitation that you were an attendee here. And in the full slide deck, there's a lot of other material that you're welcome to go through on your own. So with that, I thank you for your attention, and I'll turn it back to Debbie.
Thank you, Neil. That was a fascinating talk that you gave, a fascinating presentation, as all of yours are. So thank you so much.
My pleasure.